Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about Spider-Man, the animated series, season 2, episode 9 and 10, the Neogenetic Nightmare, that's the chapter. And the episodes are entitled Blade the Vampire Hunter and the Immortal Vampire. It's a two-parter. This showed the introduction of Blade the Vampire Hunter for the first time in Spider-Man animated series. It was my first time ever knowing anything about Blade. I never knew anything about him. And all I knew the dude was awesome. He looked cool. He sounded cool. He had cool weapons. Like, he was the literal inspiration for how Wesley Snipes' Blade movie turned out and how he looked and everything. In fact, this cartoon introduced the character of Abraham Whistler, a character that was never in the comic books. In the comic books, Abraham Van Helsing, he was the person in the comic books, but they changed it for the show. He is Blade's mentor. He helped train Blade as like a kid and teenager. And they even incorporated his bad leg where he walks on a cane. That was something that was introduced in the movie. Instead of a cane, he walks with a metal knee brace and stuff. This episode was jam-packed with so much action. I'm like, whoa, and stuff. And it was just like the coolest thing. Like, you know, vampires were now a part of Spider-Man's lore because of the whole Morbius thing. And it was just like a very unique watching experience, I have to say, because they had to censor it so it wouldn't scare little kids. They couldn't show no vampire biting nobody. Instead, and they couldn't show no vampire dying on screen. So Morbius, this mutated vampire human, in order for him to suck blood, he had these suction cups on his hand, and he'll just touch somebody and then he'll just drain their blood that way. Speaking of blood, they weren't even allowed to say the word blood. They had to use the word plasma. That's just how crazy it was back then in the 90s. Also, back in those days, they had guns, but they didn't have guns with bullets. They had laser guns, and their laser guns looked like something out of like a sci-fi movie or something. And Blade, he had all this like big bulky like rifles and guns, but they never shot a laser or gun or bullets. All they shot were like arrows and like garlic balls and stuff like that, or nets. And his sword, his legendary katana, was modified. It had like a gold hilt with a design to it, and instead of a blade, it was like a green fiery laser. But it was cool visually and stuff. So I didn't care they didn't use like an actual blade. I'm just like, oh wow, this is awesome. And in a way, I kind of like his laser sword. Like, it was just like awesome looking and stuff. And so, like, I know they introduced Blade in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon series. He had more of the ultimate look, but that one wasn't as cool as this one. Like, this one, you can tell Wesley Snipes took like inspiration big time from this version of it. Now, Blade has had his own animated series. It was when Marvel teamed up with the anime creators for their Marvel anime. I particularly don't like that. It's not cool in any kind of way. And he fights like a bunch of monsters and crap. The best one they have is their Iron Man and their X-Men. I haven't watched the Wolverine one, but it does look interesting. I might watch it next month. So this episode takes place directly after the last one. Morbius is still a vampire. He's still attacking people like randomly in the city and stuff. And of course, Spider-Man is trying his best to stop him. But, you know, since Morbius is a vampire, he's too strong. So him and Spider-Man, they fight. And then in comes Daywalker. on his motorcycle on top of the roof, kicking all kinds of butt, man. Cause see, he thinks Spider-Man might be some kind of vampire because of what that article said in the newspaper. So when he finds it, he just ignores Spider-Man. I guess he kind of figures he's not, and he goes straight after Morbius, and they fight, and he just whoops his butt. And then he's getting ready to like kill him with like garlic and stuff. But then Spider-Man stops him and gets away. Well, Morbius gets away. And then we get the interaction between Blade and like Spider-Man. And Blade is not having it. He's just whooping on Spider-Man and stuff. And Spider-Man thinks he's a regular man at first until he sees his fangs. Now, I will say visually, this Blade, he's very light skinned. Like he's a light brown and his hair is brown. But his hair is in a fade top, which was a very famous hairstyle back in like the late 80s and the early 90s and into like the mid 90s and stuff for black people. And I know some people, they always assume that this Blade was white, but you can so tell he's black. I don't know what those people on Reddit are talking about. Now this Blade, he's voiced by J.D. Hall. And well, so after getting his butt whooped by Blade, Blade like heads off on his motorcycle. Now his motorcycle is really cool. It's a regular Harley Davidson motorcycle, but it's been decked out. There's some strange globe tracking device on it, like a type of GPS. There's a bunch of buttons, and the tires, they can like spring out these like metal blades that can like drive up on a wall. And that's basically what he does to like chase after Morbius and stuff. So Spider-Man knows he can't follow him, so he just hits him with a tracer. And so, like, basically the entire episode revolves around that of Spider-Man constantly looking for Morbius, trying to stop him from feeding on people. But Morbius is up to something. He's looking for something. And he's yearning for, like, Felicia. At some point in time, he meets up with Morbius again. And next thing you know, Morbius gets the upper hand on Spider-Man. And Spider-Man, he's basically just telling him, I want to help you and this and that. Because he feels guilty. Because it was his blood that turned Morbius into like this vampire when the neogenic recombinator heated it up. And then like he got bit by that bat. And so first let me just say, I love the design of Morbius. He has pale white skin. He's wearing a trench coat. He has blue shaggy hair. And his face looks like that of a bat. So it's kind of like pig-like, He has this goatee. And you can't tell if the goatee is actually hair or is it like some type of like tattoo thing. And then he has the cool suction cups on his hands and claws. I really like that design a whole lot more than what they're about to do in that Sony movie with Jared Leto and stuff. Like, I don't know, that didn't look all that impressive to me. Plus they're gonna make him to an anti-hero. Anyway, so Morbius decides he's tired of Spider-Man, so he rips a part of his costume off and he starts to drain his blood. But in comes Blade, and so he saves him and stuff. And so I'm not sure if this happens before or after, but anyway, at some point in time, Spider-Man, Blade gets away, and then Spider-Man traps him back at his hideout. Blade is hiding out at a movie theater that's still in use. How do people not hear him? I don't understand. So, Spider-Man traps him there, and in this version, so as Blade's getting older, he's becoming more and more vampire. He has to take a serum, very similar to that of what the movie's about. Now I don't know if this happens in the comics. I don't read the comics. And so Blade is pissed that Spider-Man has tracked him down and he just wants to bust him up. But Whistler stops him. And then Whistler explains to Spider-Man how Blade became who he is. See, Blade's mother was human. And when she was pregnant, she got bit by a vampire. Actually, I don't know if his father was a vampire or if he just got bit by a vampire. I think they said that might be his father. So that probably explains why he's mixed looking and stuff instead of fully black. But then Robertson is mixed looking too, but I don't know. Anyway, so his mom was human, got bit. She gave birth to him. She gave him up so that he wouldn't she wouldn't turn him into like a vampire because she turned into one herself. So Blade, when he was growing up and everything, kids would pick on him and his strength. He was scared of crap out of kids with the fangs, and so sunlight does not affect him. And it's funny when one of the kids were beating him up. This is one thing about the show that does get on my nerves, even though it's my favorite Spider-Man show. They reuse footage, and one thing they reused was the visual of Peter Parker the way he looked in season 1. When he used to wear like this weird striped green, bluish white outfit. God, I remember that ugly, tacky outfit. But yeah, I'm just like, so Peter Parker, when like non-existent, was beating him up? I don't know. Anyway, so Whistler explained that he channeled his anger, trained him how to fight, and all this stuff. And now they fight vampires. And so Spider-Man's all like, I need to help y'all. And Blade's like, he's a loner. He does not want Spider-Man's help. This Blade is very temperamental, very angry, very beast-like and stuff, which is great. I love it. And, it was a little bit of how like Wesley Snipes one was. I don't know what kind of Blade Mahershala Ali's gonna be. I just hope he's cool. And I hope they don't mess him up with the whole Disney MCU formula of jokes and all this other crap. So anyways, so when Spider-Man leaves there, he steals some of Blade's like garlic stuff and he analyzes it. It's more than just garlic Blade uses. He uses a combination of garlic and some type of like bacterial poison. So then he gets a call from Mary Jane and she wants him to go to some kind of like town meeting that the police officer lady gonna have. Her name is Detective Terry Lee, and she's big in the animated series. I don't think she's from the comics. And so her and Spider-Man kind of worked together a while back during, I don't know if Venom showed up in there at that time, but they crossed paths at some point in the past. And so like she likes Parker, but still is more like, she's a cop and has to do things, and she also likes Spider-Man, and he helps her out, but then it's kind of like, she keeps him at an arm length type thing because she is a cop. And so basically, she's grilling Peter because she want to know like where he's been and where's Spider-Man because she wants him for questioning because they still think he might be a vampire. And so he's all like, I haven't seen him. So then she eggs him on by talking about like, then like Morbius used to like Felicia and you used to date Felicia, but then she went to Morbius, and doesn't that like upset you? So Felicia runs out because she's upset about the whole Morbius thing. She loved him, so hearing his name makes her upset. Peter runs after her, gives her a big hug, and consoles her. This pisses off Mary Jane. And this is what also leads her to start talking to Harry, which she does in this episode. So her and Peter aren't like boyfriend and girlfriend, but they're dating. So Blade tracks down Morbius, and they have it out on the roof. Then Spider-Man shows up and webs him, and his webbing is modified with that of garlic and that bacteria. And it really stuns Morbius. Anyway, at some point, Morbius gets away. And Blade wants to know, like, how did his webbing affect him so much? And then he sniffs it and sees that it's garlic. This earns his respect for Spider-Man. And so he tells Spider-Man, you better buckle up because it's going to be a long night as we hunt down this vampire. And then they just ride off and swing out into the night. I love when Blade says that. Like when he tells him it's going to be a long night, he's all like, buckle up. It's going to be a long night. I'm just like, that just sounds so cool because his voice in this thing is amazing. It's deep, it's dark, it's like razory, it's gravelly. It doesn't sound human. Like it sounds otherworldly. Like they really did a good job when that dude did that voice for it. Now in the Immortal Vampire episode, it's still more of the same. We now find out from the last episode when he was fighting with Blade what he wants the neogenic recombinator for. He wants it to turn the entire world into vampires. And so, also in the last episode, I forgot to mention, we get some nice setup for like future events. Spider-Man's mutation is still flaring up. 24 hours, he has to get like neogenic recombinator like doses. But because of the stuff that happened like last season and earlier this season, the government kind of doesn't trust this whole neogenic recombinator thing and making people edgy. So they're gonna try to like get rid of the whole thing altogether, which is gonna screw up both Connors and Spider-Man. Anyways, so Morbius is constantly looking for the neogenic recombinator, which is at the lab, and he eventually gets his hands on it. But Spider-Man knows that he wants it, so he stole a component from it. So he knows exactly where Morbius is gonna go, because there's only one laboratory that or facility that makes it and stuff. So the trap has been set in motion, and him and Blade go there. They fight. Morbius gets away. Blade is upset. They head back to the headquarters, and Terry Lee ends up following them. So she follows them back at the hideout, and so Blade's pissy and upset, and Whistler has to like calm him down and stuff, and he talks to Terry and explains, who Blade is and all this stuff that they just explained last episode. Now, this is interesting because in the Blade movie, Blade ends up falling in love with a doctor, a black doctor. And it's very similar to that of Terry Lee and Blade in this episode because they become somewhat of a romantic item. So, Whistler has created a huge device that's kind of like a force field made of light. But it's too big to put on Blade's like motorcycle. So Spider-Man figures, hey, you know what? I got an idea. So at some point in time, Peter goes back to like, his home and stuff like no. At first he goes to like the Bugle. And as he's there, Morbius is there. Morbius is looking for Peter Parker. Why? He wants more of what he believes is this sample of blood that Peter was experimenting on with a neogenic recombinator. What he doesn't know is his blood. And so, well, Peter's blood, that's what I mean. And so, like, he's constantly looking for him. He's hurting people at the Bugle. And then at some point in time, Parker shows up and he needs a favor from Jameson. This was voiced by Ed Asner, who sadly passed away about, a month or two ago. I think a month. So sad. He was my favorite JJ. So, like, he needs a favor. He needs, like, the company van. And he gets it. It's raggedy. It's beat up. But it works. He heads back to Blade's hideout. Blade's kind of like, oh, man, who are you? He don't know who Peter Parker is. And so, Peter tells him Spider-Man sent him, and Terry can vouch for him because she knows who Peter Parker is. And she's all like, he's cool. And Blade says the coolest thing. He's all like, it doesn't matter how much somebody knows Spider-Man, it doesn't make them cool. And so, like, the trap is to put the device in the van and head back to Parker's house. And then, like, get Morbius. Well, as they're going there, some things don't really go the way they're planned. Mary Jane is waiting for Peter, and she's pissed. And then she's all like, you just tell me straight up, do you want Felicia or not? And so Parker's spider sense is going off. Okay, his spider sense in this cartoon, I love to death. I wish to God they would do this for other animation or other live action movies, but they don't. What it is like this spatial atmosphere of like these neon colors and stuff, and these like really horrific horror type things and spiders, and it's just awesome. The best spider sense ever. So anyway, he knows he needs to hurry and get Mary Jane away from there. So he lies to him, talking about, yeah, he wants Felicia. So she's all like, well, screw you. So she goes in the arms of Harry. And so now that's done between them two. And so, like, Morbius hears this and he's pissed. He's all like, "You'll never have Felicia." He wants Felicia so badly, but he can't let her see him like this because she doesn't even know he turned into the vampire. Everybody just think Michael Morbius has disappeared. Now, Michael Morbius did show up in the first Blade movie in a deleted scene. Blade is like on a rooftop somewhere and he sees Morbius from an extremely far away distance. You can't even really make him out, but it's him. But it was the deleted scene and I'm kind of glad. I don't know, I kind of wish they did have, but I do like Blade too. If they would have used Morbius for the third movie, that would have been awesome. But they didn't. They went in a dumb route. Anyway. Also, J.D. Hall is my favorite Blade animated voice, favorite design. Wesley Snipes is my favorite Blade. I haven't seen Mahershala Ali yet because nobody has. And the Sticky Fingers dude from the TV show, God, he was a terrible Blade. So anyway, Morbius comes down and he's ready to attack Parker. And then he tricks him, he opens up the van door and boom, they hit him with the force field. And it's working, but it short circuits and because it's way too much power. And so in all the confusion, Aunt May comes out and Morbius grabs her and scares the bejesus out of her. So she like knocks out into like a coma and stuff. And then he takes her like away, right? So back at the hideout, Spider-Man shows up and he's furious. He's fussing out Blade. He's throwing Blade stuff around. He's tossing Blade around. And he tells him, screw both of y'all. I'm going to do this myself. And I don't want y'all help no more. So he's upset because he wants his Aunt May. That's the only family the dude has left. So I can understand why he's upset. But he doesn't know where Morbius is going to go. But then he figures it out. He knows Morbius wants to turn the populace into vampires. And the first one he's going to turn is the one he's in love with. So he heads to Felicia's place and stakes it out. And as he's waiting there, he gets distracted by Harry and Mary Jane being a couple now. But then Morbius shows up at Felicia's place and she hollers and screams, which alerts Spider-Man. He takes her away. So then he's like, crap. Now he has to follow him as fast as he can because Morbius can fly really fast. And so at some point, it's like some kind of like abandoned dock type place. Blade and Terry Lee show up, but Morbius has set a trap, an alert system, if you will. He comes out, he fights both Spider-Man and Blade. He's getting the upper hand on them, but then Felicia tells him straight up she doesn't want to turn into a vampire. And she is the one who's able to like calm his behind down and make him surrender. She tells him straight up she fell in love with a man and he is a monster. And that what happened to the man she fell in love with who wanted to cure like a plague in his own country. That's why he came to America to become like a scientist. And then he realizes she's right, that he is a monster. So he gives up. But Blade and Spider-Man screw things up. And so like the neogenic recombinator goes off and it's heading towards Felicia. Michael sacrifices himself and gets hit by the rays. He then mutates into a full-on man bat. And he tossing Spider-Man and Blade around. And then like what is it? So I think he takes Terry Lee and he flies her up or something like that. I can't remember. And then the neogenic he grabs Spider-Man and he has him in a really tight leg lock because his hands are now wings and stuff. And so the neogenic recombinator is turning around. It's gonna hit Aunt May. So Spider-Man uses all of his strength and he busts free and he saves Aunt May. He examines the like machine and tells Felicia that Morbius is no longer human, period. He is fully mutated to that of a bat. But in future episodes, he will turn back into like the vampire man looking thing and and stuff like that. And then he turns good. But anyway, Terry and Blade, they say goodbye. They kiss for the second time. Felicia is heartbroken. He takes Aunt May home. she wakes up, but she's kind of like delirious, and she thinks she's talking to Peter, but she's talking to Spider-Man, which is technically the same thing. And then it ends on one of the saddest moments. We see Man-Bat Morbius flying into a cave. The sun is coming up, and the sun causes him to be so tired that way he just sleeps during the day like a vampire. And he says in a very sad voice as he's curling up and sleeping upside down, "Goodbye, Felicia." And in the sun, you see like a picture of him and Felicia like kissing when he was a man. It's so sad. Like, if they could make the live action movie something like that, I will forgive them for not introducing Spider-Man because they're not allowed. Because he's tied up in the MCU right now. And this was such a good episode. It was dark, but on a kid's level, kind of dark. And like, what's really cool is Spider-Man always has like a different color. Like, I love his costume in this. It's very well detailed, unlike every other animation that came out. Well, except for Ultimate Spider-Man, that was very detailed too. But this one, the web lines look like it looks like an actual real costume, and somebody hand stitched it. Like, that's how good the web lines look on his costume. Because this was animation done by hand drawing back in the good old days. And so, like, sometimes his costume changes color. At night, it's normally like a purplish red, but during the day, it's like a red. But sometimes at night, they show it red too, because they would run out of the color palettes and stuff. Anyway, this is a great episode. It's on Disney XD. Check it out. It's never been on DVD for some reason. I don't understand why. It is like Spider-Man, for crying out loud. X-Men is out on DVD. Iron Man's out on DVD from the Fox Kids Marvel days. I don't understand why this isn't, and Silver Surfer's not. I think Silver Surfer came out on DVD in Germany. Like, what the world, man? It's an American cartoon. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.